And I'm putting in the chat just our various questions for all the different people who are behind the various interesting streams that we have going on. So we've got music with Craig in consultation with Kevin, and we have theater with Jennifer, and again Kevin and David, and we have worship with all of us. So I told, I can't remember who I told, but I said like there's like a funny joke somewhere, and like a choir director and a theater director and two priests walk into a Zoom meeting and have a conversation about the streaming theater. Maybe there's a funny joke somewhere, but anyway, so yeah, we're a small enough group we can just kind of have a fun conversation about what we're doing, why we want to do all this stuff live, what goes into a Zoom, what we are learning from it, what we love about it, what we hate about it, and go from there. So I think it might work best just if we kind of go around to the people who are sort of doing this in the various formats and answer a couple of these questions, and then we can just kind of open it up for Q&As after that. That sound good? Mm-hmm. All right. Jennifer, can I ask you to just take us off, since you've sort of been a part of a couple of these things, and I don't know, a couple of these questions.
It was sort of by chance. The pandemic had hit, and all of my theater projects had been canceled. And so I had time to pursue doing audiobooks, and I knew that Kevin had done audiobooks. And so I got my first audiobook, which is 400 pages long, actually 435. And I reached out to Kevin saying, can you help me figure this out? And can you help me figure out what computer to buy and all of the equipment and all the software? And he told me that he was founding the streaming theater. And I was supposed to go to Prague and direct Romeo and Juliet. And I don't know how it happened, but I suddenly had an epiphany, or I don't know. I again, don't quite recollect. I just remember talking to Kevin and like, could we do Romeo and Juliet through the streaming theater? And that, oh, no, I know what it was, is that The Tempest was first. And because I was supposed to go to Prague, I had this idea of what if we brought artists in different parts of the country to represent the different worlds of The Tempest, and that then Kevin could all stream us together in one Zoom room to tell the story of The Tempest. And that's how that kicked off. And we needed Kevin. I mean, that's the one thing that I've learned in all of this, is that Kevin gives the other artists, because Kevin is an artist, he gives the other artists the room to be able to practice their craft. And so as weird as that sounds, because it isn't theater, and what's so great about Kevin is he helped me personally embrace the fact that this is a new platform of creativity, and let's play within the boundaries of that and see if we can stretch the boundaries of that. And I think Romeo, The Tempest, it was great to explore with that, the capabilities. And then because he's sort of on the pulse of what's happening out there, he's like, well, let's see if we can go this much further with Romeo and Juliet. And I think that's what was so fulfilling in Romeo and Juliet, was the fact that he and I became more co-collaborators than him being an engineer with lots of ideas to fix things. And so it felt like I work with a lot of really great designers when I direct a play, and Kevin was like that. I just became a collaborator. And for those that saw Romeo and Juliet, it was a dual creation. It was where technology and text met.
Yeah.
So I'll kick it off there. And then what happened is that I just adore Kevin's personality. Anyone that works with him just loves being in the room with him. And then because I'm a co-warden with Joan Heller, and I knew that there were struggles with Zoom, I was in a meeting and I was like, Amy, you have to meet Kevin. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, Craig, you have to meet Kevin. I know you're having some struggles. Or he reached out to me and I'm like, you got to meet Kevin. So I'll leave it there and let other people speak.
Well, Kevin, you've been so well introduced. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do, which
Sure.
like we might not all know, and answer whichever of these questions seem interesting to you to.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for those kind words. That's super lovely. So before all of this, primarily I'm an actor, and I've directed in the past and choreographed stage combat and work in ensemble shows and things like that. And when the pandemic hit, I just knew that, you know, I saw all of my artist mates lose work and things like that, and I just knew I wanted to try and make something where we could still come together. And because I'd seen, you know, artists, theatres and things like that putting out recorded shows of their past shows, which was really beautiful, and I saw individual artists doing shows, which again was amazing. But I think the live arts really thrive off of collaboration. You know, that's when we push convention. It's when art theory progresses. It's when you get those beautiful interactions with critics and reviewers, and then your audience members. And every single time you work together in collaboration is when art is pushed to new levels. And then hopefully that influences society, and we grow as a society, and we hopefully become better people, right? And I think that only comes through us being together. And the saddest thing about the pandemic is we couldn't be. So I just wanted to try and do whatever I could to make a platform for us to be together on. So that's where the streaming theatre came from. And that started with me and three of my mates, and we did a music night. And, you know, one of them was a cellist, and he does this like looping stuff where he records different parts of the cello parts, and they kind of did that. And we had an acoustic guitarist on and things like that. And then from there, it, you know, went to the Tempest with Jennifer, which was so exciting to do this project across countries. And then we did R&J, and I was working with you guys at the church, and then I met Craig, and it's kind of snowballed from there. And we've been in national papers in the UK, we've been in the Theatre Times here, SF Chronicle, and I've been lucky to work with some amazing people. We've managed to raise thousands of dollars for the arts, which has been just so exciting. And I think more than that, it's, you know, there was this moment in R&J after the show where we all ended up in tears, because we were like, you know, it's been so hard in this pandemic and not being together and losing that part of your community. And we all felt like we were together. We felt like we were in the same room, and it was cool. And I had an email from a lady who hadn't seen her mum for the entire pandemic, and she said that she and her mum watched one of the shows together, and they were like texting as they were watching the show, and they felt like they were hanging out, and it was beautiful. And so that's sort of where I've come from and what I've been doing. and I feel very excited and happy to have met you all. It's a really beautiful thing. So thank you all so much.
That's awesome. Amy, I wonder if you might like speak a little bit about worship and where our form of worship originated and where it's taken you.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was really interesting for me the first time I met Kevin. I think we were slated for like an hour conversation, and we talked for like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. Because it was collaborative, and it was fascinating to me. My original vocation was in theater. I was felt from the certain absolutely convicted from the time I was 6 years old to the time I was 16 that I was going to become a professional actor. And so seeing the interface, particularly with the live component, and I think I asked you this question, Kevin. I was like, so there's a whole, you know, medium called film, you know, that presents things visually in a digital format. Like, why are you going through all of this work to do this other thing, you know, to produce live performances? And you said, I think because it's live, because there's something about this happening and the same time, this performance being given and people are receiving it at the same time. And I said, yes, that it clicked, because that's exactly why we're doing live worship. And it's, you know, I know everybody just kind of threw this together, you know, in March. Everyone was like, okay, what do we do literally from one Sunday to the next? Some churches were lucky enough to already have some kind of streaming thing set up, or to have you know, recording equipment or whatever, and other people just, you know, picked up their iPhone and did what they could. And some folks at that point or pretty quickly decided to go with church to a pre-recorded, highly edited, you know, really professional video production. My stepdad is a pretty techie guy and also an Episcopal priest, and so his church, they started doing that, and they were, I mean, he was the production person, right? And he was spending like 17 hours on a Saturday, like putting everything together. But I think the value of the live, like we're all praying this at the same time. Yes, somebody might watch it later. I'm preaching. I mean, it's just learning to preach to that little dot, you know, on my phone or the camera lens or whatever it was so challenging. But to know there's people really there, really receiving this on the other end in real time was so valuable in that process. And then just, I don't know, I wanted to chime in back on the theater thing. We watched most of both of the performances. And my kids actually watched most of both of the Shakespeare performances 2 weeks ago. I would not have taken my children to maybe much less even one, you know, Shakespeare performance in the course of a week, but they were totally riveted. And at one point, my 5-year-old turns to me and she says, "So this is really happening right now?" I was like, "Yeah, this is really happening right now," you know. And she's like, she got it. Like, she got the value of what it was, that was all of the effort that's gone into what it is that you're doing. So I wanted to share that. But I think, I mean, I am not the techie priest on staff. That would be Anne. um, and I think I've learned a lot just in terms of like way more than I ever knew before, you know, in terms of where the inputs come from, how it all gets put together, and then how it gets sent out and how it gets received. Like there's so many things along each of those, at each of those points in the process where something can either work and connect or not go well. So that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned. And then just that there's so many different pieces to it. I think as a user, you know, I never thought about like, how do the words get on the screen? You know, when you're watching television or something, like it just sort of magically happens. But trying to figure out how to do all this, and continually making it better. You know, we're working right now to build. We built our Zoom worship, and we're working right now to build a second worship platform through a program called OBS that will allow us to kind of package different things together and send them in a stream directly to our website and several other places where people can just watch it right there. And it'll have fancy things like, you know, the words on the screen, rather than having the person be this big and the words be this big, it'll be vice versa. Hopefully the music and the sound quality will be better, because Zoom kind of compresses that. So like, little did I know I would have to learn all these things. And frankly, like before all of this, I don't think I had a ton of interest in the sort of technological digital world, but the way that the comparison that I've made for myself is that this is basically our church building now. You know, as the rector, like I don't need to know like exactly every detail about the pipes and the roof and the HVAC system, but I need to know that they're there and that they're in good working order and that somebody's got their eyes on them, right? So this is basically the same thing now, kind of getting to know this new infrastructure. So I do think that we're going to continue. I know that we'll continue live streaming after this is all over. It's going to change. I've been talking to Brian Capener, who's been helping with the hardware setup in the church, because right now if you walk into the church, it looks like a recording studio. There's lights, there's, you know, camera setup, there's wires, there's computer, there's all this stuff. And so eventually when we have people in the sanctuary, obviously that is going to have to be less visible, kind of in your face, kind of go away into the corners. But we're thinking in those terms. We're thinking, okay, what are we doing now, and what are we going to do longer term? So yeah, I guess that's what I would share. It's been a really interesting journey. It's been really fun to have Kevin as a companion. Jennifer, you know, her encouragement in terms of just like learning to you know, love the camera, love the audience through the camera. You know, that's been just really, really lovely, and just never knew we would be in this world, but we learn and we grow, and here we are. So Craig, can I turn it over to you?
Yeah, I'm just trying to rethink how I got involved in all of this. I was in the middle of a production of Newsies when the virus shut everything down. And we did one performance. Our last performance was to an empty house at the high school. And that was weird, but the kids responded so beautifully. It was like you never would have known that there was an empty house. Kind of like watching the Giants right now, or any baseball games. It's very strange. And I didn't really realize how serious it was. I thought, this would probably last just a little bit of time, and then I'd be able to go back to my rehearsals and end up the year like we always do with the concert, with the kids, and go to the festivals and, give the awards and honor the seniors. And I thought it would be all just fall into place. But obviously it did not. Then started to sink into me when I was watching a computer generated program of one of my past students, Mia Pelosi, in her college choir. And they did this beautiful rendition with all their faces on the screen. And it was really quite good. And I thought, I need to do something like that, just to end the year. We have to do something like that. How do I do that? And I can't remember who it was that said, call Jennifer, because she's doing that right now. So I did. I emailed you, and you emailed me right back, Jennifer, and you said, Kevin Kemp, that's the man. And so I emailed Kevin, and he just responded immediately and said, yeah, we can do something. And we talked about it, and then I pulled in Brian Capener, and we suggested recording every one of the students we have. There were 54 of them. Bring them in one at a time so they're not all in a group, and have them record just one song. It was our farewell song called Time for Moving On. And that was quite a week. We were in the church with Brian, and one at a time, everyone had 15 minutes to come in and lay down a track with their headset on and a click track. And some of them knew the song really well. A lot of them did not know the song very well, but they did their best. And we mixed it all together. It took a whole week to do that. And then we sent it all down to Kevin. And Kevin sent it to his friend in England, I believe his name was Alex.
Yeah.
Who actually did the editing of the music. And somehow, I don't know how he did that, but he made it sound pretty darn good. Because there were some kids, I'm telling you, that did not know the song. I think I just lost him.
No, I'll get you. Pop-ups are crazy.
Anyway, again, to mention Kevin, this wouldn't have happened without him. And by the way, my daughter, Melissa, who works with me with the choirs, really did the bulk of the work with Kevin. She really understood all the technology and all of that and pulled it together. And we were so pleasantly surprised the way it all turned out. And Kevin kept saying, this is going to be great. Every time we would Zoom with Kevin, he'd be crying because he'd just been watching some of the kids sing, and we knew that we had the right guy at that point because he got emotional about it, as we all did. And then
it is now.
You see, there he goes again. But, and the funny thing was, Kevin, I meant to tell you this, that after Melissa and my daughter Carly, who you've never met, and Angie, who's my oldest, I should say our oldest, after they saw it and they saw you, the first question they had was, is he married? And I had to disappoint them and say, I'm afraid he is.
I am, yeah.
To a girl named
Kristen.
Kristen Kevin Kemp. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Anyway, it was just a joy to work with you and with the whole process. And we don't know if we can do it again. I'm just praying every day that things are going to eventually go back to where we can meet personally. I have some ideas how to meet with my students virtually when the school starts, but I'm looking forward to the day when we can all get back together. But the experience was wonderful. And I'll tell you, the other thing I want to mention is we're really blessed at Grace Church to have Brian Capener.
Mm.
This guy is the real thing, and he did a wonderful job with all those kids, and with everything he's doing for the church right now.
Did you guys hear the bell go off when I was talking?
Yeah.
Brian's outside right now recording for the little intro video for our worship. It's going to have the bell ringing 9 times. So he's out with this great big microphone out there recording. I know, right? So as we speak.
So he is with us on this.
He is with us. He's
Yeah.
just, working with us.
So that's my input on that. It was just been a great experience, and temporary. Hopefully just temporary.
Well, David, how about you? You've participated in like everything too. So
That's true.
what do you like? What do you hate?
Well, first of all, I just, you're going to get tired of hearing this, but working with Kevin and Jennifer, I knew this already about Jennifer. But Jennifer just creates an amazing environment in which actors get to work. She creates this atmosphere of acceptance and collegiality and emotional awareness that is just really exceptional in my experience. So thank you for that, Jennifer, and for inviting me to be part of R&J. And Kevin, is equally positive and supportive. You'd never know this because of his dour exterior, but he's really just incredibly positive and just makes you feel like you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. So thank you, Kevin. As an actor, I had some trepidation about this because I'm not used to, having my face be up close to people, I'm not used to being in people's faces. And the other challenge is that when you're on stage, you can sort of look into the eyes of the person that you're relating to. Right now, you have to pretend like this little machine on top of your screen is the person that you're relating to. And that takes some energy and some intentionality. Which I think we all got to, but it was new and a different experience for me. And I never really thought of myself as being a sort of film visual, film or television. But now I'm getting an agent, and I think I'm just going to move to Hollywood. No. So there's. Let's face it. I mean, live performance is so magical because of the fact that it is live, or the kind of performance that we're used to doing. You're used to being in the room and feeling the vibrations of the musicians or the actors. You're used to being in those 3 dimensions, and I miss that. I miss singing in church, and I miss speaking in unison with the members of the congregation, and I still have a lot of grief around that. But, excuse me. But beyond that, I just thought it was amazing the extent to which, with Romeo and Juliet, they sort of made lemonade out of lemons, if you will. They took the limitations of the medium and used it as a way of creating something new and different. And so it was really exciting to be a part of that. And the other part that's so enjoyable is that it's just always fun to be with the students at Napa Valley College, because they're very energetic and positive, and they're just a lot of fun to be around. So it was a great experience.
David, can you I'm not sure if people understand what happens because you can't hear anything. You don't, like anybody that saw Romeo and Juliet, there are a lot of sound effects and there are a lot of visual effects. And the actors don't know that. So you have Kevin whispering in your ear. Dance
Right.
really fast right now.
Slow dancing. and then he like imitates a siren. Siren, siren, siren. I don't remember how you did it, but we couldn't hear any of that. We didn't see any of the stuff. So it was and also challenging in that respect.
Could you hear the other actors delivering their lines and see them?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because we decided to make it a Zoom relationship.
It's basically anything you can do on the Zoom or see on the Zoom you can, but all the other stuff you're adding in through OBS you can't see, which was like my experience this Sunday morning worship. I'm going to go watch the OBS feed later.
Yeah.
So I wonder, just before we kind of turn it into a Q&A, this question, like we're all sort of like this, some part of this is our work, like all of our, sort of life intention is all caught up in the theater or in worship or in music, right? Or some combination of those. And I wonder, like, is there anything that you've learned from having to turn it into a live stream about that? Like, how has this kind of upgraded or changed your understanding of this thing that you care so much about?
I'll speak first about that because I think it affirmed for me the creative process. And because this is so hard, there's great permission to fail. I thought Romeo and Juliet, they're going to be big fat failures. And I didn't care because we're trying our best. You try to do this out there, I felt that there was there was a lot of, I really wanted to create, and I wanted to create fearlessly. And with The Tempest, it was, a lot of professional actors. So I didn't feel responsible for them like I felt responsible for the Napa Valley College kids. I felt responsible for their experience. And I know from The Tempest that everybody felt it was a respite from what was going on, and it was a way to cultivate their own creativity. And it gave them, a lot of them said, this is the first time I haven't felt isolated, or I'm not depressed, or this or that. It gave me structure because I was going to rehearsal. And when we had like a talk back sort of after Romeo and Juliet at our virtual cast party. And there was so much discussion about the fact that they had routine, that they felt that they had purpose, and what I imparted to them is this is not going to last forever. It isn't. It just isn't. So that what's sort of interesting about this is allowing ourselves to just sort of reflect this time in history through the work we're doing. And that they are choosing, because the students chose to take the class this summer. They didn't have to. It's an elective. That's transfers as well. But the point is that they spent their time being creative and to put something out in the world. And I didn't know how it was going to be received, but I knew once we put it all together that we were onto something, and it felt very powerful to be part of that, but to not create with the end goal of, oh, I've got to make money, or I've got to do this, or but simply to create an experiment in a new medium. That was really thrilling. So I think that daring to fail, I want to take into my work more. Certainly that sense of collaboration. And yeah, that's all for me. I think that answers the question.
I'd love to speak on that as well, if that's okay. I think what I've learned most about this is like there is a core to everything that we're doing, in terms of art and you guys in the church as well. And that I think often in art, we're always like, what's the new thing? What's the new way we can tell this story? And so you cover yourself in big costumes and you put up a big thing behind you and you throw some lights at it and you're like, this is amazing. And then actually, I think what we've learned through this medium is that the narrative and the connection to your audience is absolutely core, and anything else you do is just superfluous. And so that when Jennifer and I were working together, we were like, oh, what effects can we throw at it and stuff like that. And actually it was like, no, let's make this technology disappear so that you guys can just experience these people. And I think that's something I'm definitely want to take into my work going forward, is that what is the core, what is the truth of whatever it is we're trying to say, because that's what people care about.
And let me just say that a gift out of this is I had no idea. I mean, I knew Kevin was a really great actor, and he is. I knew that he directed, but until you really work with someone in a particular way, you don't get it. And also it's rare. I mean, Kevin, I don't want to speak for you, but like, I feel like I want to work with Kevin the rest of my life because he's so collaborative. Do you know what I mean? But just in the fact of, it's rare that you're with someone who, can make you so honest and say, do you really believe that? Or do you want to do that? Or wait a minute, Kevin, this is what I think. And that for us to be able to honor that and stretch each other because I wanted to make it a gimmick extravaganza. We both.
Yeah. Well, I think we both did. We were both like, let's throw things at it, and then we're like, no, what is Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway, so that's theater jargony stuff about process. But having a collaborator that helps you to get really honest. Usually, if you're working with a really great artistic director, you get that. And so I felt I had that with Kevin, and because it's so lonely out there in our rooms, to be able to have that, it felt, I was really grateful.
Me too.
Well, I have two things that come to mind, like that I feel like I've like moments that I really learned something. And the first was like in the first, weeks of this, like the first 2 weeks, I was still on maternity leave, and I was like awake a lot at like 2 a.m, like scrolling through my like clergy women, Facebook groups and stuff like that, just kind of watching this, unfold and all the different ways that people are grappling with it. And then like had like one conversation with Amy, like when you guys were sort of deciding like which way to go with this, like, is it going to be a live thing? Is it going to be, on YouTube? And sort of like what I think I just asked, like, what are the principles? Like, what are, what do we want? What are the top 3 things that we want? And one of them was like that real time connection, like means something to this church, and other churches have made different decisions for different reasons. Like it wasn't their top choice, but like something about that, like, knowing that we're all doing this thing at the same time, even if we can't be together. And I think like, that was such a, I don't know how you remember that, Amy, but like, it was such a, like, I don't know, like, I think that's important sort of moment, like, and it turned out, I think, really to be true of the community. And so I think like, for me about just, even when you're just making things up as you go along, like you have instincts about what's going to work for your community that you're connected to. And I think I've had to rely on that, like learning how to like hold a worship space or preach or whatever, like rely on my sort of imagined, connection. Like it resides only in my imagination now, but my connection with, the community, when I preach, like I don't like have a specific thing that I'm visualizing or something like that, but I have to rely on, like, I know that connection's there. Like I know that people are out there, and I know that like we have connected in the past. And so that's real, even if I can't like feel it in the same embodied way that I could before. And so that's helped me like get past the like, and I'm pretty sure my internet's not working right now, or like the camera is definitely not on. Like, like I can get past, because I know like, okay, the people who are out there are my real people with. So those have been my kind of 2 learnings about leading worship that I think I'll stay with me hopefully one day when we're back in person.
I'm hoping the Catholic Church doesn't kill us, because this bell's been going for like 15 minutes, and I think they might be having a service right now. I think they got it going. It's really hard to stop it once it gets going, because it's really heavy. I think I've been, 2 things really stand out. One is, how I didn't know before this. I would have known it, but not known it, how central the incarnational aspect of our worship really is in every way. Christianity in particular as a religion has built itself around the incarnation. Like we believe God like put skin on and walked around on this earth and gave us these concrete ways to connect with him and with one another. And so having that really just taken away has, number 1, highlighted how important it is, but then also number 2, highlighted at the same time, we also have this transcendent connection with each other. And that when Jesus says, worship in spirit and in truth, we really are doing that with each other at 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings. And I've felt that really powerfully in so many ways. So it's a real kind of both and experience. I think the other way too, and just in terms of how we're putting together our stream, Anne and I went and preached and celebrated and did everything just from our homes for probably the first 2.5 months that we were in the shelter in place. And I think that part of the intent was, my sister did the same thing. Part of the intent was really to say, it's shelter in place. Like we're here in our houses, just like everybody else is. and you're not like missing something that's happening down at the church. Like we're here at home, you know, we're all kind of collaborating and making this thing together because we are the church. And I think that message was really important. And at the same time, people really missed seeing the sanctuary and feeling that connection with it. So as I have kind of looked at different churches and what they're doing, I've kind of come to this, again, sort of a both and middle place of we want enough visuals of the sanctuary and sense of connection there that we can kind of enter into that space spiritually as we worship together. And I love this idea that we're all making church together, you know, and so seeing people zoom in from their bedrooms and their houses and seeing the little videos of the ushers at their houses, and just that we're all participating and coming together in this new way and different way, I think is really important to what we're trying to do. So I don't know how that piece will carry forward. I mean, I do think even when some people can come back together, other people won't be able to. So we might still like zoom in a reader, zoom in an intercessor, things like that. So we shall see, because we've all learned not to plan too far in advance.
So Craig, can I ask you a question? What's in store for you for the next few months? Are you going to be doing any online teaching or?
Well, David, that's exactly what I'm working on right now. Melissa and I are meeting and we're discussing different ways to have voice lessons maybe, or maybe a small, even one-on-one repertoire development. We haven't solidified it yet, but we're definitely going to do something because we don't want to lose the momentum of, you know, kids growing musically. Especially the little kids, you know, they're just getting started and we want them to keep growing so we can get them into our next choir and ultimately into chamber choir, and ultimately they'll have that for the rest of their life. I mean, we don't want to lose that. So yeah, in church choir, David, I have no clue at this moment. Chamber choir, my adult group, most likely we won't start until 2021. I haven't written them a letter yet, but if they're watching, Sue, very possibly we won't be singing in the fall, which means we won't be doing much Christmas stuff, but definitely we'll do something big. When we do get back together, we're going to do something really big. I mean, all the groups, I'm going to get them all together for a whole weekend of choral music. It's going to be fun. May not be till, but we're going to do something. So that's my answer right there.
Well, again, I just thought the recording of, I'm sure it was a lot of work, but the recording of that song was just terrific. I really, really enjoyed it. I watched it several times.
Oh, that's nice. So that's
very well done.
That's one of the 800 people that have watched it.
Yeah, and the editing too was so beautiful. I loved how the seniors were big, and it kind of, I mean, so many of these you get like tutor people on and they're all like this big and you can't see anything, but being able to have a moment to really see each of the children and then having them all together, having the fun little intros. And my son was like one of the last ones to get off.
Wait, who is your son?
He's Jacob. He was like one of the last ones to get off because I think he did something silly or like right at the end. He's one of the he's like one of the swingiest ones. Yeah. Yeah, the really swingy one with the kind of long hair. Yeah. Yeah. It was so cool. It was just really beautiful.
Yeah, the way it was edited was really special, and
it was fresh. It was really it was really surprising. Lovely.
Kevin kept saying, well, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And we kept saying, Kevin, you just do what you do, please. We know it's going to be really first class, and we were thrilled. I mean, Melissa's still talking about it. You know, she put in more effort than I did for sure, and she was just still talking about it. Can't get over it. So I'm glad you saw it.
So Craig, I want to know how many years have your choir sung that song, because all of my children certainly did, and now they're all adults with their own children.
The first time I found that song, I think, was 1976. And I've done it every spring concert since 1976. Wow. I mean, it's a perfect song. It's a perfect song to say goodbye and thank you and good luck, and we're here to support you and all of that. And it's really for the seniors. So, so that I can't do the math, but it's been a lot of years. Yeah.
That's 41 years. That's a year longer than I've been
Probably,
alive.
yeah.
So
Probably photos of those performances. Wouldn't it be fun sometime to kind of merge those all together as a group of singing?
mhm.
You talking about all the groups?
Yeah, all
Yeah,
over the years.
Well, maybe we'll do that. Maybe on my last concert, we'll get everyone to do that.
Maybe that's your bring back concert.
Yeah.
What's
Post
my,
COVID-19 concert.
say that again, I missed that.
Post-COVID-19.
Oh, okay, a COVID-19 concert. Is that what you said? I didn't miss it.
Yeah, you know, when we're out of the pandemic, you want to plan that big event. That should be well, listen to me. The director comes out. Kevin, what do you think?
Oh, I've got it in my mind exactly what I'm going to do, and that's a good idea. It's a great idea. I appreciate it, but I have
Two directors combine.
That's right. That's right.
no, I'm
It
gonna
turns
get
into a reality TV show.
the teen choir and the chamber choir. They're all going to have their time, and we might do something like Sue said, and end up with all of us together. That would be really cool. That'd be hundreds.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
hundreds, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll work together, Jennifer. And you know, the thing is, you've always said we're going to do something together.
Mhm.
Jennifer, are you hearing me?
Yep.
Okay. Remember Godspell? We're talking about Godspell.
Yeah.
You're not too enthusiastic right now.
We do need to do something together, though, Craig. We certainly do.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
something will come out of COVID-19 will be that, something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody should write a murder mystery musical about a community choir.
Okay, Craig, I'm on with Godspell now.
I mean, the most likely candidate to write that would be you, David. I think.
No.
Anyone in the whole world. So.
I would offend too many people.
Too late.
You know, one of the pluses of these recorded services has been having readings by David and Jennifer in particular, who know how to enunciate, who know how to articulate, who know how to keep their voice up and not drop at the end of a sentence. And I really appreciated that. And I think we can all learn from you. Thank you.
Very
All
true.
that Shakespeare training.
It paid off. Yeah.
So out of anybody anybody have any other like creative questions or curiosity questions for anybody else on this little panel?
Just one question about both performances. How in heaven's name did you ever arrange the storm and the tempest and the fight scene in Romeo and Juliet? That must have taken a lot of practice.
That is our friend Matt Cowell.
Really? From the college?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it's not just Matt, because it's about sound. Kev, take it.
Yeah, so Matt and I, so Matt at the college is a wonderful sound designer. And so with the storm, he and I basically found a load of rain, thunder, and all those kind of sounds, squashed them all together into one track, which he beautifully mixed and things like that. And then, and so I was sort of live editing that track so that we had the start of The Tempest come up, you know, where it said like Globetrotting Shakespeare presents, and then into The Tempest for a time. And I'm kind of like fading up the storm as we're getting into the sort of crescendo of that opening. So, you know, just to make you go, ooh, Tempest is starting. And then when the actors come in, you know, we just fade that down a little bit, throw a couple of thunder cracks in there when it needs it. And yeah, Matt is a bit of a sound genius. And then also turns out he's a stage combat guy, and so am I. So for Romeo and Juliet, both of us have choreographed a ton of fights in the past. Neither of us have ever had to choreograph a fight on Zoom before. So we spent, you know, a few hours together, basically just like rolling around on the floor and picking up weapons and hitting
In
our
your own
cameras.
room, though. In your own.
Yeah. And seeing what worked, we quickly realized swords didn't work because you can't see them in the little box. So we went unarmed. I've studied martial arts since I was about 15. So we kind of looked at a ton of different martial arts and what might work for this structure. And we kind of went from there. And we were lucky that there was a viral video, which is a load of stunt guys from Hollywood made a video where one of them would like punch the screen, and then another stunt guy would go like, "Ugh," like that, and then he'd go, "Oh," and then it would go to the next stunt guy. So we kind of took from that as a leading place. And then I'm a bit of a games console guy as well. So back in the day, I used to play a lot of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, which are games where the fighters are looking at each other. And so we also used that on the screen as well, where the two actors kind of turned to look at each other in this profile thing. And that's reminiscent of those old games. So yeah, inspiration from Hollywood stunt guys, silly 80s video games.
Yeah. And I have to say that, Craig, this is sort of what you go through, but Matt, who he's talking about, was a student of mine when I was first at the college.
Really?
Yeah, he was 18, and he was like, yes, that was, anyway. So now, he's like this full grown man with kids, and, and what was hilarious is that Kevin and Matt are they said, we want to see if you like what we're doing. So they sent a video of themselves doing the fight. So if you could see these two grown men in their offices, totally serious, carrying out this fight. It was one of those days during COVID-19 where you're like, this would never have happened without the pandemic.
That's awesome.
It was just,
Well,
but it would be like seeing Richard, just in it with David, like, just like unexpected how like the way they were fighting, like it looked like they were strangling each other.
Oh dear.
It was awesome.
Very silly day. So a lot of silliness, I think, is the answer to that question.
Yeah.
How did the fight come about? A lot of silliness.
Yeah. Well, even just the way that you would have, sometimes they would be looking at each other, like the pair of lovers in The Tempest, like looking at each other through I mean, like you must have, like, I suppose on OBS you can position the boxes, because in Zoom it's super random where the boxes wind up, and you could just all wind up in different places, right? But you had to position them pretty intentionally, I would think, right?
You can control it somewhat in Zoom by who enters first. And so that was a lot of Jennifer in rehearsal going, okay, you need to make sure that you enter, then you enter, then you enter. And when you've got like, I mean, how many did we have? 16, Jennifer and Orange?
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes, and in Tempest, I think we had 18. So yeah, sometimes it was like, don't mess it up, otherwise the special effects go weird.
Or like, you don't know, like I had in Tempest, people looking at each other in a particular way. That was my whole thing. And when they didn't come in at the right time, I was like, well, that's lost, And so with Romeo and Juliet, they understood because they saw the Tempest and they were like, oh, I see where I've got to be really, so it's like entrances and exits. So their entrance is, and so this is the cool thing is my colleagues are like, how did you manage them turning off and on their computers, or who did that? I'm like, they did. So everybody learned how to like turn off their computer really, or turn off their screens really inconspicuously.
Even
but all
when,
of that was choreographed.
When like people were, in Romeo and Juliet, after people had died, so they're like, dying, now I'm dead. And then they've got like one finger hovering over a hotkey. So they're like dead, and you don't know that one of their hands is on an off key. And then Jennifer's like, okay, I'll turn it off now. And then they're like, beep, okay.
or even worse, they're dying and they're falling to the ground and they're like moving their computer down.
Yeah.
Amazing. That was just amazing.
And like the disco, obviously, as we said earlier, in the disco, the actors can't hear the disco music, but they've got to kind of dance in time. So there's me on my kind of cueing microphone just going, disco, 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 disco. So they can all like dance in time and stuff.
And then they have to, because the slow motion, I wanted it to go in that I just like completely, I said, you got to look at this one actor and watch them do the slow motion because they're doing it so well. And it was I remember I was so excited to show that to Kevin, and I was so afraid he was going to hate it. And I just was like, and he had his doubts. I know, I'm like, I'm doing it like those dances. And he's like, well, I kind of thought that it'd be like this. I'm like, just watch it, please.
You were right. It was awesome.
And then what was really cool is that I was finding really great 70s disco music for them to rehearse to. And Kevin's like, if we play that music, even if we get the rights through the college, because we have a big, huge, policy that allows us to use music, he's like, there's a chance that Zoom can shut it down out of our control. So Mark Ostin, who is at the college, who's a choir director in, I think, the Methodist Church in Napa. Anyway, he's a wonderful composer. He usually does all the shows, and he came up with this disco track. And first it was an 80s track, and then it sort of became a calypso track. And then eventually it became what we had.
And then what was fun is Matt and I were trying to find another track to distort, to create a kind of more abstract world. So we took that disco track, threw it through a load of weird technology, and then it came out like this like crazy dubstep, like kind of thing. And we were just like, woohoo, that's cool. So yeah, it was very fun, silly times.
Yeah, so I mean, even though Kevin and I are like out here with you and David, the amount of collaboration with Matt Cowell and other people at Napa Valley College, and that's what I wrote the president, and I sent him and I said, you're allowing us to be able to do this, because the college could easily say no, because they supported this, and they could easily say nope, not going to do that. And I mean, I feel very fortunate. And I teaching during the summer, I feel like I've got a leg up for the fall, because I felt like a big failure in the spring.
Yeah, I really want to echo that. I mean, your lighting director and the costume director.
Yeah.
I noticed when I was watching the tape, the costumes lent so much to creating a world in the play. There was such a kind of unity of feel and color. It really added a lot.
Yeah.
What's her name? Abra
Berman. Yeah.
I have a question for the people that come to the church, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Because obviously going to a place of worship is a hugely emotional and personal thing. And so I was just wondering, like, how that's been, because, we've been talking a lot about how we've been trying to make these things, but I'd love to know, like, how you felt as an attendee, how different that's been, and if there's been a process for you to be able to commit to those moments of worship and personal times, and what your process has been, I guess, as well, of like getting involved.
I want to hear from Mary Ann.
Or Sue.
It's Mary. For me, initially it was hard, I have to say. And when we were able to have the services, or at least part of it, Amy or Ann back in the church, that somehow fed that emptiness, just to see the sanctuary again. That was really helpful. And I just love the music, and I really want to say how much I appreciate you, Craig and Carolyn and Grant and David, and all who put all the sound and music together each Sunday. I know it's a big commitment of time and energy, and please know it's so appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we have to get together and do more for next month, Someone else?
That's Mary Ann.
Do you want to add anything, Marianne, about the experience of worshiping online?
It's a fine example of the pressures we do face trying to create these things.
She's way up in England, so I bet that's why.
She's
Googling her next takeout meal. Marianne's going to start writing a takeout restaurant blog.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
That's a great idea. And if someone's to do it, it's her.
I wonder how it's been, though, for people who are perhaps technically challenged with the computer and figuring out Zoom. Has it been a lonesome experience for them? And have you heard feedback?
Yeah, I think so. I've actually, there's quite a spectrum. People some people love the online worship and they like it better than in-person worship, and they're going to keep worshiping online when we come back to in person, you know, because they can do it from their couch and then go out and golf, and it's amazing, you know, like it fits. Or I talked to one woman who's very pretty much homebound. You know, she's probably been to church in person half a dozen times since I've been here for the last 4 years. But she said, this is so great. I can worship every single Sunday, and I can worship with everybody, having the same experience that everyone else is having. I think for other people, and I can't, the folks that don't like it have been less forthcoming with their opinions than the people that have. So it's a little bit more guesswork. But I think for some people, and there was an initial kind of like, oh, like I can still connect with my church people. And then there was kind of this disillusionment of, as the thing wears on, that it's just not the same and we don't know when we'll be able to go back. And then I think some people just have decided, you know, I'm not going to do church this way. This isn't church for me. You know, people even that will get on a Zoom call for like a meeting, but they're not going to do Zoom church, you know. So people are really in a lot of different places about it. I do think when we did communion a couple weeks ago, I think you were on the planning call for that, Kevin, we wound up doing like takeout communion, basically, you know, consecrating ahead of time. And then we all got on the service together and received. There was something really powerful about that.
Oh, cool.
Like way beyond, like I had like pretty high expectations, and it totally exceeded that even. So that's something we're going to kind of keep adding back in more often. And like, who knows, you know, we're playing around, the regathering task force is playing around with trying to find a big open field so we can all drive our cars in there, do like a drive-in worship sometime. And,
amazing.
You know, I just think we have to keep improving. We have to keep inviting people to, I think, in as we get the new platform built. And some of the folks I talked to who hadn't really been on the Zoom worship, when I told them, you're going to just be able to go to the website and it'll be right there. You don't have to like log in or anything. They thought that was going to really work out for them. So I think we just have to kind of keep improving and keep reaching out and keep being creative.
I just want to say something about leadership of this church, because this is such a challenging time. And again, I feel so blessed to be part of the vestry, because I don't know what's going on the inside and how challenging it is. But when I reflect back in March, when we didn't, you know, March, it was just like, this is going to happen. Everything was shut down. But Amy already had her eye on the ball of like, oh my gosh, church is coming. And, you know, Amy, this is your world. So, you know, I get a little bit like theater, but, you know, you were just like, this is coming and we need to make sure that this is special. And what are we going to do to keep our church family engaged? And right away, you're working with Brian. You're at that church at odd hours of the night. We're trying to get a fire lit amongst the four of but I just remember those special early times of trying to, and it seems like eons ago.
Mm-hmm, it really does.
But the fact that you made that choice and right away we're getting online and this is how we're doing it with such grace. That's just a beautiful thing to behold in leadership. And I know we're talking about it in terms of video, but I can say the same with Anne, with all the work as far as Sacred Ground. We really need that during this time. And so to be part of a church community that is so forward thinking and yet so in the present moment, I just want to say that here in this space, I'm really grateful for who are our clergy, especially right now. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm really grateful for you too, Jennifer, and everybody. I mean, just, gosh, what a team, you know?
Well, this was a really delightful conversation. Thanks, everyone, for coming to be a part of it. It, you know, turned out to be a smaller group, but it was a lovely conversation. So I'm really grateful. And share it more broadly. So,
Craig?
Yes.
Oh, wait, I'll wait till the cameras. Well, I'll just put it. I do want to do Godspell with you, but I have an idea about how to do it.
I changed my mind. I don't want to do it now.
You'll come around.
So there's been a lot of shout outs in this little time together. And I just want to give a special shout out to Craig Bond, because for somebody who's been doing what he does like so superbly for more than 40 years, as we just heard, to be able to be so flexible and so adaptive and say, well, we can't do it that way. Okay, we'll do something else. We'll figure it out. You know, you've been incredible, Craig. I mean, we went for a walk like 2 months ago, and I was like, oh my God, Craig's gonna quit. He's just gonna tell me he's done, you know? And like, far from it, you know, you're just so positive and creative, and I think that's really, like, you've achieved something really beautiful with the choirs this year, and I know there'll be more, you know, in the future.
Thank you.
So,
Very
yeah.
sweet of you. Thank you.
Mm.
Appreciate that.
And
So
Opie,
however Gospel turns out, it'll be great.
But
In the
Sue,
church. He's in the church.
happy birthday, David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks on your birthday.
Spending your birthday with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you're treated well this afternoon.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
where's the takeout going to be from, David?
Bouchon.
Oh, of course.
Lovely. Yeah. No shortage of wonderful options in Yountville.
Yeah, I think Bouchon just started their takeout in the last couple of weeks. I don't think they were doing it. But. So we always like to support the home team.
That's right. Yeah. Market was doing barbecue in the Catholic Church parking lot yesterday. It looks like it's still set
I'm
up.
going to try that tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So Kevin and I have a meeting.
We do.
Hi, guys.
I have a meeting with Anne and Amy after
Yeah.
you.
Gotta get to our next Zoom meetings.
I know. Peace,
Okay,
everybody.
Okay.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Great to